Okay, we're recording live.
Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Our guest today is an award-winning documentary filmmaker. We are here today to talk about her most recent film, CoExtinction, the story of our southern resident killer whales. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please like, share, and subscribe. This episode is sponsored by Surfrider Foundation, dedicated to protection and enjoyment of our world's oceans, waves, and beaches, and marine mammal rescue in the Vancouver Aquarium. But without any further ado, Elena Jean, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Woo, I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm liking this energy right off the get-go.
Stoked.
Well, yeah, no, we're really excited to have you on here. So, and we've got all sorts of questions from people that have thrown them in here too. But before we start every episode here, we do something called Two Truths and a Lie, or a bunch of truths and a lie, and a bunch of lies and a truth. We'll find that out, right?
It's grown. It's changed over time.
It's all lies.
It's all lies.
Yeah.
It's all lies.
It's all lies.
It's all lies. It's all lies.
Duped. It's just a trap.
I know. That's right. Okay, so number one, I'm going to read these out. We're going to have to guess, okay?
Yeah.
So number one is, when I saw my first orca while diving, I was so excited I bit down on my regulator and broke a tooth.
That's fun.
Okay. Number two, CoExtinction has won several documentary film awards, including the Vancouver International Film Fest's Rob Stewart Eco Warrior Award. That's so cool. If that's true,
Cool.
love Rob Stewart and Sharkwater and all that stuff that he did. Amazing guy. And that's true. We'll see. Number three, secretly, I'm a herper. I have a love for reptiles. I don't know if I pronounced that right or not, but herper. And I got another one here. Before finding my passion as a filmmaker, I was a professional surfer.
Dope.
So, Dev.
Dang, man. I don't know. That's kind of hard. That's
breaking your tooth on your regulator while you
breaking tooth on the regulator.
Yeah.
CoExtinction winning the awards.
The Rob Stewart Award. Yeah.
Surfing.
Cool.
Wait, what was the other one?
I can't pronounce it.
Herper.
Love of reptiles. Secretly,
yeah,
but it's secretly she loves reptiles.
I don't know if you got enough time to love reptiles. If you're onto the I'm sorry, I just closed my screen here. Yeah, I'm gonna go with not the love of reptiles. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's the lie. Is that
Gosh,
that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I don't think you like reptiles.
I
How about that? I don't. Well, no, I do, but snakes.
Oh God, but she secretly does. We're screwed. Okay, yeah. What do we do? How do we do here?
Guys, I love all animals, including reptiles, but I especially love reptiles. They're so cool.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, guys,
Wow.
reptiles are amazing.
Reptiles are the thing. Dang.
Yeah, I used to have a snake. She recently, just up until recently, I've had a few different pet reptiles, but my snake passed away recently. So rest in peace, Ava. Yeah.
What kind of a
I don't have
snake?
any right now. She was a ball python.
Right.
Beautiful,
yeah.
like pastel colored one. Yeah. Yeah.
What-
You guys,
what's-
they're very popular snakes.
Yeah. How do you pronounce that word then? That Nigel's trying to say. Harper.
Harper.
Oh, herper. Oh,
Herper.
herpetologist, short for herpetologist. I'm not actually a herpetologist, but people who, kind of love reptiles or like to go herping or learn about reptiles or keep, breed, or have an interest in reptiles call themselves herpers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
All
that's
right.
interesting.
Well.
Okay, were there any lies? Because I kind of took some of your other ones and we kind of played around with a few here. Was there?
There's another lie in there, or well, that was a truth. So there is
That was a
two
truth.
lies. There's two lies in there, and
Two lies in there. We messed
one
up.
of the lies is that, yeah. Well, do you want to guess, or do you want me to?
Dev, you want to guess?
Spill the beans.
I don't know. You can go. Like breaking a tooth on the regular. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. That was a crazy time that didn't happen.
Ah, dang it.
Yeah,
That didn't happen.
that would be next level. I
Yeah.
feel like I would talk about that on a constant basis. I would not put that tooth. I would not have that tooth replaced just so I could have an opportunity to talk about the experience. Yeah, but just rock it.
That's too funny. Oh my gosh.
Um,
And
but the
this, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
the other lie is that I was not a professional surfer before filmmaking. That I think my childhood dream would have been that, but I unfortunately grew up in Ontario, which has
Okay,
no
there we
surfing.
go. Yeah.
Well, you can surf the Great Lakes, which I didn't
Which
do
they
when I was
do. They
little.
do in we've seen it on Endless Summer too. Oh my gosh, where is
Sheboygan.
it? Sheboygan. That's
Yeah.
right. The Sheboygan Surf
Yeah,
Club,
and
right?
that's where in Surf's Up Chicken Joe's from.
Is that
No
right?
way.
And I think that's like a play on that
Oh
Surf's
my
Up
gosh.
or Step into Liquid or whatnot.
Was it
The
Step into
movie.
Liquid? Maybe it was Step
Is it
into
Step into
Liquid.
Liquid? Because
Maybe,
then
yeah,
it's
it
the
was Endless
dudes
Summer
and they're
too.
like,
I
we're
think it
from
was Step into
Sheboygan and we surf the Great Lakes. Hell yeah, brother. And it's like all
Yeah.
this sick stuff. And then if Surf's Up with Chicken Joe, he's from Sheboygan. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I never caught on to that. That's amazing. I've got friends out here who grew up surfing the Great Lakes, like that was their thing.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, yeah. Then they moved out to the big leagues out here. So
Yeah. I guess it's got to be just like so windy, right? Just like
yeah,
unbelievable winds,
wind
and then you're
swell.
good to go.
Yeah, hurricane season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Tornado, just got to get right in there, got to paddle out to
Yeah. Just
it.
well, that's even like over in West Van there in Ambleside. I've surfed
Yes.
in Ambleside actually a couple times because it
Oh,
was just like
cool.
ridiculously windy.
Wow.
And yeah, didn't get any like barrels, but got some decent waves.
Nice. That's what it's about.
That's funny because Kina was going to be on the podcast this morning here, but she
Mm.
packed up her van last night. And she's on a surf trip down to California, and she texted us this morning because she got Wi-Fi in a Starbucks in Seattle. She says, "I'm in Seattle, and I'm now googling all the surf spots down Oregon, all the way down to whatever that was this morning." So that's pretty funny. Oh my God,
Great.
yeah. But so Kina, so it's interesting. So Kina, your sister, my daughter, and her friend Kayla, well, actually, first I'll tell you a quick little story here. Is that when Kina was like in grade 9 or something, she came into the house. She goes, "Oh God, you guys, you got to watch this movie. I saw this movie in class, and it's called Shark Water by Rob Stewart." And we're just like, "Okay, it sounds cool." And it's about shark finning and you got. So we watched it. Reiko and I, and probably you, Dev, and we all watched it. Where I'm like, this is an amazing, incredible film, incredible guy, incredible filmmaker, and really kind of opened her eyes to a lot of this type of filmmaking. And then she came in about 2 months ago, and Kayla, her friend Kayla, who's living in Tofino here, and Kina, they went to the Vancouver International Film Fest. They came home and goes, "Dad, Mom, Dad, you got to see this movie. We went to see it at the Vancouver Film tonight. It was called CoExtinction, and you got to get these guys. You got to get the filmmakers. You got to get Elena Jean and her friend on your podcast." I'm like, "What? Okay, sounds good." So hence I sent you an email because Kina was the one was giving us a poke. And so I think it's just awesome. I think it's so awesome what you're doing. And
Oh, that's rad.
so are you from Ontario or Calgary or from yeah. So how did you get into filmmaking? So you moved across the country out to the West Coast here, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Ontario. And
Yeah.
that's so
Ontario.
cool that you have that story, that memory. Rob
Yeah.
Stewart was a huge inspiration,
I know.
growing up. And then, well, I guess the one truth of that Truth and the Lie. So CoExtinction did win the Rob Stewart Award. And that award
Awesome.
was particularly close to my heart because he was my
Wow.
number one hero,
Yeah.
growing up. And
That's
I think, the way that documentary filmmaking really shifted around the time that Sharkwater came out and started to really, encourage and change the way people thought about, the conservation stories, and made them more kind of exciting and compelling, and created this whole massive movement. And so that was just really, really cool. And with CoExtinction, we took a lot of inspiration from Sharkwater as well as a lot of other documentaries. But, when it comes to that, like that journey, that process of like, discovering and true passion, just pursuing, that pure passion. That's really, at the heart of CoExtinction, and is, similar in a way to Sharkwater. So,
yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question.
Yes. No, it's good.
Yeah, so I moved from Ontario. I grew up in Ontario, studied engineering there, and then I did not pursue engineering, clearly. I pursued filmmaking. So there was a bit of a pivot point between that and filmmaking. And I had always enjoyed video making. And storytelling and whatnot. So that was something, and conservation, you know, I was running environmental groups and stuff in my university. So the threads were all there. It was just kind of a matter of following the winding path. And I had this opportunity shortly. Well, I suppose it all kind of begins with this clothing company, with this entrepreneurial project that I started, which turned into an organization that was dedicated towards protecting endangered species. That was really the heart of what I wanted to do, and telling stories about specific endangered species. So we'd build clothing collections around these different endangered species. And then I would, in some cases, go and actually learn about them on the ground and share video content. And the idea was one species a month. And it was kind of this like way to reconnect people with wildlife, you know, in the modern world, in a world where everyone is so detached from wildlife for the most part. So how do we tangibly reconnect people? And people really loved the clothing idea. Ultimately, I discontinued the clothing. It was really difficult to find a way to make clothing truly sustainably, and that was kind of you know, the conundrum within the business. And I wasn't actually enjoying the clothing component. But one of the species, the very first species that we did, was the southern resident killer whale. So I went out to the West Coast. That's where I met Gloria, who's my co-director and co-founder in CoExtinction. And she and I kind of hit it off, and I learned about the work that she was doing to protect the southern resident killer whales. And then both of us lived in Ontario at the time. She suggested we work on a film, and I was like gung ho, you know, this is right up my alley, because I was like just craving filmmaking, but I didn't know it at the time. That was definitely my calling, and it kind of took me this windy pathway to find it. And so we dove headfirst into it, started working on it, and then midway through that, we were both kind of working different odd jobs and stuff. And I actually got a job working for Sea Legacy, which is, of course, on Vancouver Island. And so I moved out west to go work for Sea Legacy, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Nice.
That's amazing. I just want to just kind of a couple of stats here on these resident southern resident killer whales, right? So is it true? I mean, I've been reading some of your backstory here, that there's only 74 of the southern resident killer whales left. That's it.
Yeah,
it's like
that's
74.
true.
Right. And it's mind boggling. And then I also saw that. So when I grew up, I would go, my parents would take me to the Vancouver Aquarium, where I'd see Scanna, the killer whale, and Hayak. And we had one here, one in Victoria, Seattle, and they would do tricks and do all this stuff. And I was just like, oh, that's really cool. I was like a, 8-year-old. And, but in the 1980s, a third of their population was depleted because we were grabbing them and putting them to captivity into zoos. And that's something like that just blew my mind when I saw that. It's just horrific. It's horrific what we did.
So many of the killer whales around the world in these exhibits and parks are actually southern resident killer whales, or were southern resident killer whales. A lot of them have passed now at this point, but most of the killer whales in these parks are like bred there, or originally were southern resident killer whales, because the first killer whale was that we interacted with in a capacity that was not just, shooting at them from afar or being scared of them. And this is, of course, speaking, Western culture, or, settler culture. We only interacted with the killer whale for the first time back when, around that time, there was a killer whale that was captured originally for a museum. It was supposed to go in a museum, and it was supposed to be just the bones. They just wanted the bones. But the killer whale was harpooned and survived. It was dubbed Moby Doll, basically. They thought it was a female, and it was dragged all the way back to Vancouver, at which point it was still alive. While they were dragging it back, the other orcas in the pod were, trying to push it up to the surface to help it breathe. The pod stuck with it all the way to the end. And then they ended up creating this kind of pen for the orca. And, in the process of keeping the orca there, they realized, oh, it's actually kind of friendly. It's not this scary beast. It's not this scary creature. It's not trying to hurt us, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, keep in mind that orca is probably extremely stressed and exhausted. But yeah, so they tried feeding it different things at various points. And at some point, they realized that it ate fish. And so, yeah, that's at that point, they were like, it became a spectacle. And so people around the world came to see the orca, and then
Wow.
that's when they realized that some money could be made in the
Jeez.
process.
Wow. So, and I know there's a I see it in my head all the time because I think it was a year, maybe it was a couple of years ago, where was it J35? They had the numbers J35. She was carrying her dead calf. She had a calf and it died, but she was pushing it and trying to keep it up above water. And I think it was like for 17 days or something. It was a really long period of time. And I mean, the scientists followed it to, and to see, and yeah, and then I guess eventually she let her baby go, and it was just a really sad thing because the birth rate has just not been happening. Except this, wasn't it this week? Wasn't there one born? Wasn't there one born this week?
There was one really recently born.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't
and
know
it's a
if
girl, isn't it? I saw it. I
Yeah.
saw it somewhere, and it was a
Uh-huh.
baby girl, which is even better.
Mhm.
And that was, I
Yes,
think, yeah, in the
exactly.
last week or so, I saw it on the news or something. Yeah, which is amazing. So everybody's very excited about that.
Yeah.
In that pod, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
I
southern
know.
residents are some of the most closely followed and studied, orcas and marine mammals in the entire world. I think, they're
Right.
up at the top for marine mammals, like, every individual being ID'd and personality understood and followed for decades at this point, thanks to the work of the Center for Whale Research, Ken
Right.
Balcom
Yeah.
and other scientists as well. And so, yeah, to your story with J35, this behavior shown
Yeah.
by J35, where she was carrying her calf, is something that
Hmm.
has been seen before in orcas around the world as a behavior of a sign of grief, is what scientists believe, but never before has it ever been documented that an orca mother would carry her calf for that long,
Yeah.
17
Yeah.
days, and so imagine the pod swimming like miles and miles and miles and miles all up and down the coast, and she's just got this dead little baby on her snout, and
Yeah.
that really captured people's attention, and that really went around the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And
Mm-hmm.
and so actually I've got so my niece Lucy Willis, big shout out to Lucy in Qualicum on Vancouver Island. She's I think she's 17. She's graduating from high school this year, but she just got accepted to work at the Orca Lab all summer. So camping up
Amazing.
on the island and the whole summer to study the southern resident killer whales, I guess, or that's what they do, right? And so she had a couple of questions, and the one thing which is really interesting, which she sent here, and it's talking about the peanut head, and I guess the southern residents, because they are starving, and I didn't know this, that they only eat, is it Chinook salmon, or is
Mm-hmm.
it like they eat salmon, but they only one type of salmon or something. I don't know if that's true or
Mm-hmm.
not, but
Yeah,
that's
Chinook salmon. Well, it's not
wow,
actually only Chinook salmon, but it's like
right?
80%. It's the vast
Yeah,
majority of their diet is Chinook salmon, and then there's some other species of salmon in there, and then yeah, it's pretty much just Chinook salmon, and that's because the Chinook salmon is the biggest and the
right,
juiciest,
right.
for the orcas. So
The best eating, yeah.
yeah. And
Wow.
you think about all the effort that they expend in hunting and chasing the salmon, and so they want it to be, worthwhile.
Right.
Hmm.
That's really interesting. And we just had on last week, we had Chelsea Greer from another organization that studies, and her thing is wolves. And she was talking
Mm.
about the coastal wolves, and the coastal wolves only eat, like they eat salmon, right? They drag the salmon up, but they only eat the heads of the salmon
That's
because of
right. Yeah.
because of the parasites in the
Mm.
salmon's body. They only eat the heads,
Mm.
and so yeah. So the salmon are kind of a critical factor in, I think, this whole thing here. And with the northern residents and the southern residents. Northern residents, because we were up, we did a river trip down the Kispiox River last summer, the whole family. My buddy's a fishing guide up there, and the rivers were full of salmon. And I think up there they're not having too much problem. But down here in the lower, in the lower area, the Vancouver, Puget Sound, all the way down through Seattle, this is where our salmon are having a great difficulty. Hence, the southern residents are having a big problem. But Lucy mentioned, my niece also said that it's the damming of our rivers, especially the Lower Snake River dam or something is it Washington or I don't know where it is. It's in Washington, because the salmon aren't being able to to get through and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's right on. And if she saw CoExtinction, which you mentioned, she had the film kind of goes into depth into those specific dams to a
I
great
see.
degree.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is there's so many different things affecting salmon populations and driving salmon decline. And one of those being habitat destruction. And, one of the key habitats for salmon, because they are both river and ocean species, is, of course, the rivers. And they'll travel very, very far upstream when they're spawning. And when they're also traveling, they'll travel back down to the ocean following those rivers. And so they'll spend their lives in the ocean and they'll come back to the river that they were born in and spawn. And so any obstructions of those river systems cause a big barrier for them to be able to come back and successfully spawn and carry the population on. And so big dams are a big problem, and especially for the Snake River, which used to be one of the most significant producers of wild salmon in the Pacific Northwest. I think it might actually be the most significant, or historically was the most significant.
Right.
And so, by calculations, it's estimated that the dams are killing, millions and millions of salmon every year. And if we were to remove them, then we would instantly see, salmon are incredibly resilient species. So if the dams were to come down, we'd see millions and millions following that pumped out into the ocean fairly quickly. And this is true wild salmon as well, to keep in mind, which is important when because we've got hatcheries in the mix. But so, the dams also are an issue because they've become obsolete from a economic and largely a social perspective as well. And that's kind of why, we argue, taking them down. And that's just as one of the best ways to protect or help wild salmon populations.
Yeah, I guess Lucy also mentioned here that our governments and whatnot. We talk about the boat strikes, the boat noise, and overfishing and all this other stuff, but they're not really addressing the situation with the dams. And she wondered, kind of why that. I don't know if but that is very frustrating if that's kind of the key thing to the demise. Or
it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that when it comes to big problems that need to be solved, policymakers will often not jump to make those changes because of certain internal frictions, or frictions. And so in the case, even though a large economic argument, that's very clear, could be made to have the dams removed as much as an environmental one. The issue is some kind of behind the scenes, various people with, these special interest groups that are interested in keeping the dams up, that have a particularly strong, chokehold on what decisions are being made. And, it's kind of comes down to certain people in power not wanting to take the responsibility because that would mean some financial fallout for them. And and I think also there's a bit of, status quo, just, policymakers not wanting to make the big decisions that would make the big. So they kind of will steer towards, smaller, more, and sometimes more obvious things, like whale watching is an easy one. And or even just the classic example of spending more money on research, which is kind of this, like, one of the characters in the film says so eloquently, is just kicking the can down the road,
Yeah. Well, I saw yesterday, it just popped up on, I don't know if it was my feed or something, but I think it was the North Shore News, actually. It said Vancouver Port Authority implements expanded whale protection corridor, and that came out yesterday. So and they have a map on where they've got this protected, this corridor and things. Yeah.
I mean, that's great. Like making changes like that are great, but
Mm-hmm.
the ridiculous reality is that we have these big industrial projects or these big projects that exist, like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project, which is
Mm-hmm.
going to increase tanker traffic sevenfold, and that's coming right down the pipeline, pun intended, and
Yeah.
hitting
Yeah.
our waters. And it's going to, the sound from these tankers is so significant comparatively to other boats and vessels and whatnot, that pretty much the orcas are going to be surrounded by the tankers the entire time they're in the
Yes.
water. And I'm
Yes.
sure this corridor is really great, and I don't know too much about it, so I don't want to speak too much into it, but it's like, we really need to be leaning into the big harder decisions. But the dams is certainly
Mm-hmm.
a bigger but also achievable action that we can make.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I've attended a few times and our other son Dylan, who is he was environmental science at UVic. He used to volunteer at the Pacific Salmon. Is it Pacific Salmon Foundation? What's
Yeah.
the big one? They have these
Yeah.
massive galas, and we were invited. I went on a couple of times, and it's really interesting. Because they're over the top. They're unbelievable galas in Vancouver Convention Center, and I'm sure they're doing amazing work. But most of the sponsors are all the mining companies and Trans Mountain Pipeline, like all those guys. And I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, isn't this kind of a bit of a, it just yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably going to have them on and interview them and trying to dig down a little bit and find out what they're all about. But it kind of really kind of shocked me that the people donating to the Pacific Salmon Foundation are the biggest mining companies and the biggest oil companies and the biggest, these guys, which are actually, causing the issues with our salmon. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's get back to whales.
Yeah.
I know Kina, because so Kina's off on this surf trip, but she said, "Hey, could you ask her a question for me?" She said, "When you were making this film, CoExtinction, did you have like a real aha moment, something that you didn't realize going into the film that kind of hit you while you're in the middle of filming it? Like something was just like, oh my god, like this is, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you must have had,
I
yeah,
mean, filming was, I would say, for the most part, incredibly chaotic. We
yeah,
were
always is,
ripping up and down the coast. And I think, ripping up and down the coast, talking to so many different experts in different ways. We had scientists and we had politicians and we had Indigenous leaders and we had people who had lived on the coast and were embedded in something for a very long time, so could speak on it. And so we had all these different backgrounds. And I think one of the things that I realized, and as a team we realized, and because every day we would come back and we would debrief, was just how complex this was.
right.
There were so many different varying kind of opinions and so
Mm,
much information. It was information overload. And what you see in the film in CoExtinction is just, a scratch on the surface of everything that we learned and all the different people that we talked to. We unfortunately have this, window of only an hour and a half that we can share. Okay, what's the most, important, condensed, and even then, I think people who watch the film will see it's, there's a lot of information that's shared in it, and it's quite the journey. So I think that was one of the big things, was really realizing the overwhelm of information. And I think it's important to talk about that, because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to when they start to dive into an issue and wanting to solve a problem.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have so many different reflections on that I was making then. Largely, I think number one, I decided kind of then and in the process of making this film that, making decisions based on principles and based on, ethics or some moral ideas is really powerful in that way. Because when you have information overload, when so much effort is being put into understanding exactly what's going on, like we have to have all the science before we make a decision, or it's the opposite, we just simply don't have enough data and we need so much more data to make the best decision. You have to have something to help guide, what you're decision making on, or what you're going to take action on. And that's what the conservation principle, like I feel like I just live by the principle of like, okay, that's why, like, being a conservationist and self-identifying as a conservationist,
Mm-hmm.
identifying as someone that just cares for the planet and recognizes the value in that as like the sustainable, the sustainable option, or so trying to like make a choice but it obviously gets very complicated and nuanced. So it's still a generalization, but I think sometimes I found these situations where people were embroiled in the details, or all these different, special interest groups fighting for different things, and we were losing the point, or we were forgetting the point, which was, to protect planet and people, and to, ensure the survival of a species and our own species, health, like
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of things. So yeah, I think that was a big educational piece for me. And the other aspect of that as well too is, whatever the situation is, there's always work and things that can be done, and the
Yeah.
beauty in that is that you get to choose, because there are so many different things, there's so many different avenues to tackle the
Yeah.
problem, and so you can bring your special skill set, your set of interests, your passion, and apply it to the problem and contribute to solving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that, I mean, you're so right with all the different interest groups and whatnot. I've just in my later life here, I've started kind of working and volunteering for a lot of different groups, and I've been on boards and all this stuff.
Mm.
And the one thing that I found is that it's because I'm from the business, in the business world, and then going into the nonprofit, and it's been a real eye opener for me. And I find that it's incredible. Everybody's got a really, really good heart. Like everybody's heart is in the right place. Everybody wants to help and protect the orcas, the salmon, the planet. But we all seem to be we're not organized as we should be. And then there's the whole thing about fundraising, and it's almost like, it's like, well, I'm not telling you what I'm doing because I want to go and get the fundraising. I need the money from these people, and it's like, and I want it, and it's like, it's this funny, it's just a really different world. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like they're not going to share information because the potential they're going to kind of cross over into their funding area. And it's because everybody's fighting for funding, right? Everybody's fighting for funding. And if it's like we could figure out a way to all kind of work together, that would be. And this week it was kind of an interesting week, because I've been thinking about, the orcas, and they've been around for millions and millions of years, and our indigenous peoples have been around for, who knows, hundreds of thousands of years. We don't even know. And I was at a concert. I went to see Midnight Oil in Stanley Park 2 nights ago in Malcolm Bowl. First thing I've been to in 2 years since COVID. And I stood there in beautiful Stanley Park in Malcolm Bowl with the amazing trees around us. And then Midnight Oil and Peter Garrett there. He's been around since I was in high school. He's probably in his late 60s. He's always advocated for environmental. Every song he's like the Tragically Hip of Australia. Like they're and they sing about, and when he started singing a song about, it's called, about reconciliation and protecting. I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about, because I was going to interview you this week on the killer whales, and I was standing there in the crowd and I lost it. I started bawling. My tears were running down my face, and I was just like, what the heck have we done? Like, what, our indigenous people were having all, the reconciliation. What have we done to our indigenous peoples? Over this, decades and decades and decades. And then we've got 74 resident killer whales, southern resident left. That's it. And then it just really pissed me off. And I just got emotional. I just stood there and I was like wiping the tears off. I was just like, and he's like, his message is so, he's been singing the same message for 40 years. And, are we listening? I don't know. Songs are amazing. He's an incredible guy. He's actually was an MP in Australia for many, many years as well.
Wow.
Incredible guy. But it's just like, I lost it. So anyway, I kind of lost track with what I was saying here, but it was just, what the heck?
That's beautiful. I mean, I think, to your question, are we listening? I mean, you were certainly listening, right? There's people that are listening, and it's hard because, life can be hard, and we've got our own stuff that we gotta sort out, and some of us are just trying to survive. Many of us are, and we also live within a system that's not conducive to caring for the planet. And this is my fundamental belief, and why you know, in large part a storyteller and a filmmaker is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the cultural foundations for the systems that we've created are, you know, amok in that, you know, we culturally, what do we value? And so I think stories and music and these kinds of things play a significant role in shifting what we value and how we see the world, and what we communicate to each other that we value. And so I think that's where significant shifts over the long time are happening, and you can see it happening, certainly, like the way that we've changed our respect about certain things. And I think a lot of people feel like we're, you know, we're waking up, and sometimes it feels silly because you'll see stuff like, you know, greenwashing stuff, you know, where you're just like, well, this is like,
Yeah.
this is, or people, you know, one of my favorite stories is like, on this is one day I was walking down the street on the sidewalk, and there was these two kind of like middle school girls in front of me, and they were drinking these like green juices out of these like plastic cups or whatever from the shop. And the one girl was like, take a picture of me, take a picture of me. And the other girl was like, okay, takes a picture. And then she's like, okay, hashtag vegan. And then the girl was like, but it's not vegan. And then the girl was like, well, just pretend it is. Just pretend it is. Like, and I just watched this whole thing play out, and I was like laughing to myself because, you know, you could look at that and be like, well, it's just, this is so silly, you know, like that
So
people
silly.
are not actually connected to the true value of what they're preaching. There's a lot of virtue signaling, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that it's cool, you know, for those girls to be vegan, the fact that it's front of mind in, you know, our mainstream culture and whatnot is really amazing. So the shifts are certainly happening. And I think we just, yeah, got to encourage everyone to make those shifts, and hopefully through like community and sharing stories and aligning on these like ideas of what's important to us,
Yeah.
we can drive that. But especially, you know, the people who have got a lot of power, that's where, you know, if we can reach those people, you know, that,
Yeah.
you know, that's where some significant more immediate shifts can be made too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you were saying like it's, you know, the girls doing their little green, like I mean, they're contributing in, you know, whatever way they are. They're, you know,
Yeah.
making these, you know, it's right. It's the front of their brain. But I think like, and you said it so well a few minutes ago, we're all so busy in our lives. Like we're all so busy and we're running around. And I honestly, like I've said this in a few other episodes, I honestly believe that every human being, most of us anyway, you know, really want to do good and really want to help and make our planet a better place for our kids and whatever. It's just that we get caught up in life and decisions and things. And I was really, I mean, I think like you, I was always dialed into this when I was younger because I was living around the world and I was doing environmental mapping and scuba diving and mapping reefs and stuff. And I was always connected, but I don't know if I was really doing anything. And then much later, I think when I was like 40, I asked a buddy of mine, Dave Ash, that was doing a lot of volunteer work, and he was down Vancouver East Side and building drop-in centers for at-risk women and all this type of stuff. And I said to him, I was having lunch with him, and I said, how do you have time to do this? Like, how do you, like, I want to help, but I don't know where to start. And he's just like, Nigel, he says, not that difficult. You just have to do one little thing. You don't have to build a building. You could give a guy or a girl or somebody a sandwich on the street or sit down and just have a talk with them and find out, because everybody's has their story, right? And I really thought about that. And then Devin and I and our family were in Guatemala in 2012, and we were kind of doing a little bit of kind of awakening adventure. And we were there for the Mayan calendar changeover in Tikal. And I was leaning up against this tree, and one of the people that we were with, John Perkins, asked us to go off and think about, you know, our life and what we're doing. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I was having a hard time because I really didn't think that I was contributing that much. And then I was leaning against this big kapok tree in the jungle, and I was looking down, and I actually shared this story in my book because it really was kind of profound for me. I saw these cutter ants, right? There's all these cutter ants. They're all carrying their little piece of a leaf or a stick or whatever. They're all going across past my feet. And I had a bracelet on. I took off my bracelet and I blocked their path to see what they would do. And they kind of, you know, figured it out and they went around it. And then I just lifted it up, put it back on my wrist. And I'm like, that's what it is. I said, that's what it is. I'm sitting here thinking that, you know, by later life, my buddy Dave Ash said, Nigel, try and give a sandwich. And then we started going to Mexico with him to help build homes for homeless. And but and we were doing, then I became super, I got to save the world. And I started doing all these things, but I really didn't think, what am I doing? Does it really make a difference? And then sitting there with those cutter ants looking down, going, Nigel, no, you are making a difference. All those little ants, all of us around the world, we're the girls with the little drink, you with your film, Dev and all these people and people in Indonesia and London and whatnot that are doing their little thing. And we all get kind of like, oh my God, it's so much work. I'm really making a difference. Collectively, we're like the cutter ants. We're all collectively making a huge difference in the world. And it could be the tiniest thing, or you can be like a Bill Gates or whatever. You're solving the world's problems, or Elon Musk trying to get to Mars, whatever it is. But we're all making a difference. And so, and you, I mean, with your film, I think it's amazing. And then also you have great news about your film. That aren't you going to Paris soon as well?
Yeah, I'm not going, but Gloria and Nicholas and Morgan and a number of Will George from the film. A number of different people are going from the film, so it's really exciting to have them all there in Paris, and it is the biggest theater in Europe, which is just wild. It's really cool. I want to give a shout out to Morgan, Little Gypsy online, because she's from France, and she kind of has helped us out in so many different ways with the film and with campaign work. And she had said, we're going to get it in that theater. This was like years ago, and she did it. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Here we are.
That's just fantastic. Yeah, no, it's great. And we encourage everybody to see the film. And Dev, got any questions there? I've been kind of taking the mic here from you.
No, I'm just hanging out, man. Just here listening to you guys. So it's all good.
Got anything that hits you want to ask?
No, I just said I'm just chilling. I'm just hanging
out. Okay. Yeah, cool. He's thinking about the waves or something. Yeah. He said, darn it, all my family's out surfing. Yeah, because your brother's living in Australia now. He's working and surfing. Nice. Keena's on a surf trip to California, and Deb's like, how do I get on the waves?
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm thinking about it too later today. Come on through.
Yes, I know.
Come on through.
Yeah, straight up. I know. I got to go to Tofino. Got to check it out. Oh, man. It's been
give me a shout.
Well, your boards are sitting here in my garage here. They're getting dusty, Dev.
Yeah, if I'm ever in the area, I'll give you a call, hang out with Lily and stuff. We'll go out for a beer, go out for a surf or something.
Yes, let's make it happen.
Yes. Yeah. So and I also just want to say thank you so much to Lucy Willis for sending us those questions, and good luck up at the Orca Lab this summer. I think that's amazing. It's incredible. Amazing, yeah. And thanks, Keena and Kayla too. There too. They were gonna, but they're off doing their thing. That's great. Yeah. So
shout out to those ladies. They're rocking it.
Absolutely.
Keep it up. Keep it up. You're gonna have an amazing time at Orca Lab. I have never been, but Gloria has again co-director of the film, and she's in the film. She's been up to Orca Lab a few times, and it's one of her favorite places on the planet. So
I can't imagine. It's pristine and quiet, and all you hear is the little clicks or the whales, because they're listening. They're always listening, aren't they? Yeah.
And just again, just embroiled in history, such fascinating history, and just born out of passion. Founders are go back to like the Greenpeace days. And crazy story, I was down in Mexico a few months ago, and I met this older gentleman who randomly just bumped into him. Talk about serendipity. He was like, I built Orca Lab. Like, he was the carpenter. He was the guy who made it and was friends with
what the heck?
Yeah, with the crew, with that whole Greenpeace crew. So
that's crazy.
Very cool. Super crazy. So we just bonded. We had a moment. He had this like hostel down there, and cool. He let me stay in it and stuff. So it was great.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, there's some amazing. I mean, I've always, we're so fortunate to be here on the West Coast, here, where a lot of these, from Greenpeace to, all these amazing global organizations now started. That this was like the petri dish or the of everything. And there's so many like incredible things that have come out of here. And I whenever because I used to travel a lot for my work, I'd be all over the world, and people go, Vancouver's a hotbed for this environmental activism and this, and then but environmental technology and so I'm really proud to be here be one of the I'm one of the elders now, I guess. Gray hair.
No, not
Gray
yet.
gray
Not
hair.
yet.
You know,
man.
yeah.
You're still young. You're still kicking.
Oh God, still
You got-
kicking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Killing
I
my
feel it. I'm coming
my
up.
surfboard.
I'm hitting my 30, my 30, and like not this birthday,
Oh.
but the next one. It feels like a big like.
It's
Here
nothing.
we go.
I had my 60
right?
like a month ago. It's and I'm like convincing myself it's nothing.
It's
But
nothing.
yeah. But you
It's
know the good
nothing.
thing is when I go surfing,
Nothing.
Dev's always watching me. So it's always nice. Dev's you hauled me out once and looked after me. But yeah, it's nice to have when you're out, you know, kind of conditions and
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Age
Dev
is
and
just
Keena,
anything.
they're all and the kids are always looking after me. So they
Gotcha.
always got an eye on me. They don't tell me I do, but I know they do.
Yeah, just a little. Oh, he's okay.
Just,
That is
just
all
a
right.
little side eye.
That is fine.
So that's right.
He seems to be fine.
He's like flailing out there. He's way
Yeah.
out the back.
yeah.
Way out, current.
Yeah.
Take it back.
Yeah.
But he's with the whales, so it's good.
He's with the
Yeah,
whales,
exactly.
bleeding out on the
Marty
beach
loves
again.
to
Yeah.
leave
Yeah. All right. Well,
anyways,
you want to wrap her up?
Yeah, thank you guys. As always, everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. We had a wicked day today, a wicked podcast. If you want to know more about Elena Jean, we'll put everything in the link of the description of the video. Check out the CoExtinction film. It is super sick. And then a big shout out to Surf Rider Foundation and Marine Mammal Rescue. But other than that, thank you so much for coming on today. We'll have to have you back on at some point. It was just awesome. It was a pleasure talking to you.
So great. Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you guys. I love what you're doing. It's amazing. Keep up. You're inspiring so many people. So
No,
thanks.
thanks.
Thanks for having me on.
And make sure you say hi to Lily there and
I will.
when she comes back.
I shall. She'll probably